My guest today is Samantha Blum, where she works at data.ai and leads their customer success team. During the discussion, Samantha shares her interesting start in sales, or really in the sales world, which began as charitable work that turned into being a capital raiser and ultimately building a capital raising team for the charity she worked for. It was really fascinating to hear about her work as a volunteer at an orphanage in Ghana and how that ultimately set the foundation for her sales career. She touches on habits of top performers, and she is also hiring. So we discuss the hiring market and what she is looking for. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the High Tech Freedom Podcast. This is a podcast where we bring successful tech sales professionals, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs to share best practices, insights, and lessons learned with other tech sales professionals. As a sales professional, the more we learn, the more we earn. Once we earn it, how can we put those hard-earned commission dollars back to work to build additional income streams that will create the freedom we are all working to achieve? I'm your host, Chris Freeman. I'm a high-tech sales leader, real estate investor, and lifetime learner. All right, Samantha, welcome to the High Tech Freedom Podcast. How you doing?
I'm good. Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I really appreciate you doing this. Well, let's just jump right into it. So you and I actually met over LinkedIn. And I had noticed that you had done a post about earning an Achievers Club. So we'll come back to that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Yeah. So I'm the senior manager of customer success overseeing North and South America for a company called Data AI. We're a mobile market data provider, which allows customers to understand, benchmark, and optimize mobile and digital performance.
Okay. And so as a customer success manager there, you're working with the sales teams after they acquire the customer to continue to get them to onboard, renew, consume.
Exactly. And expand.
Okay. And expand. All right. Well, I'm curious in that role, does a salesperson move on then to the next account, or do they still stay engaged in some way?
So the AE doesn't remain engaged at all, but after close, the customer success manager and an account manager will join the account, and they'll essentially take care of the customer through the entire customer lifecycle and experience of working with us.
Okay, so you're still selling at that point, continuing to try to grow the revenue, the consumption, and everything tied to their usage. Okay. Well, right. So Samantha, you also used to be an individual contributor prior to moving into customer success and really leading the team. You have an interesting way of how you got started in sales. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. A long time ago already, almost coming up on my 10-year anniversary, but I actually went to Africa and lived in Ghana doing volunteer work. At an orphanage for a few months, which was really intended to be volunteer work, but ended up being something that propelled my entire career, which was a really unexpected outcome. When I came back from doing the volunteer work, I started a fundraising campaign for friends and family to help, fund the orphans that I had lived with for a period of time. And we beat our target twofold. I was planning on raising $20,000. I ended up raising $40,000. It had a huge impact on the children that I lived with. And from there, I thought to myself, wow, I really loved that. And we were able to, not just myself, but everyone around me, have a huge impact on others in the world. And I saw the joy that it brought other people that, participated in the fundraising campaign. So I ended up working in nonprofit for a few years. I started as an individual contributor of sorts there as a fundraiser, where, I really learned the ins and outs of prospecting for individuals to cold call and ask for them to make a donation. I put together fundraising events. I had my own experiences of, people hanging up on me and having to really work very hard to, sell in a lot of ways. I eventually, built out a fundraising team there and contributed to a $150 million fundraising campaign at my time working in nonprofit. And eventually realized, I love this. I could do this, though, in addition to also working in the for-profit space. At that time, tech was the coolest thing that could ever be happening in New York City, in my opinion, and was where I felt like I really needed to experience working. So I moved into an individual contributor role as an account manager at a company called Meltwater, which was both customer success work and account management work in terms of closing contracts, having upsell targets that were pretty aggressive, and still very much worked in that, cold calling and warm calling space to hit my targets and quotas and things of that nature.
Yeah, so you just jumped right into cold calling, and I mean that's asking for money is a difficult thing, and I didn't realize that you had actually gone into it for a short time as a job, because I was going to say that if you enjoyed it, if you have kids and you've been part of any school or any program, they're always looking for volunteers, and the one volunteer that they desperately want is that person that'll go out and raise money, go get donations, and it's a nonstop need, and it's probably one of the hardest jobs that you can do. But if you raise your hand, they will be knocking at your door.
Yeah. And, honestly, I had so much fun with it. I don't, cold call anymore, but I have such fond memories of that time of my life where, you had to make 120 calls a day and, have actual call numbers that you needed to hit. And I think it's really, really important for anyone that wants to work in a sales organization in the capacity of reporting to, a chief revenue officer, which customer success falls into. So I'm really thankful for that foundational experience. And I think it's, something I'm really proud of, that it was a bit of a unique way of falling into the sales organization through a nonprofit arm. How unexpected is that?
Totally, yeah. Well, I guess I'm curious, in that role, or maybe you're jumping to your first role after doing that, when you were still making calls, the cold calls. Anything that you picked up that you started to get really good at, or maybe a tactic or a tip that kind of worked for you as you're trying to kind of connect with those people and establish some type of conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to, and I still say this to, the people on my team as being really the two things that I want to ensure everyone thinks about before they, either make a cold call or are calling someone they already know is the baseline of, human relationships is trust. And it's building trust through, in my opinion, being very curious about the person on the other line, and also ensuring that you do some type of prep work. Maybe you, peruse on LinkedIn and see that you actually have something in common with the person you're about to, make a phone call to. Mentioning those things, also, pushing people to talk about themselves. By human nature, people love to speak about themselves, and curiosity really attracts individuals. So those are kind of the two things that I would always try to keep in mind. And then I would say also, creativity, keeping it fun and fresh and new. If you're sitting, at your computer or at your phone, you're doing the same thing over and over again. Not only is the other person on the line going to know that you're bored, but you're going to be bored. You have to switch it up and keep it exciting and fun for yourself and for the other people that, you're trying to get something from.
Yeah. I would say that in my mind, I was thinking, for you, it could be the 50th call you're making, but it's the first call that person's receiving that day. But it's probably the 50th call they've also received that day.
Yeah.
So how do you,
We get those spam phone calls on our phones all the time.
yeah. So how do you differentiate yourself? Well, that's fun. Well, so now in the customer success role, which is still a sales role because you're carrying that customer through the journey, getting them to add on and buy more. But I'm curious, what are some of the things that when you look at your team and the performers that do really, really well and grow their base and grow the accounts, what are some of the things that they're doing that you're trying to kind of get more of the team members to adopt or do?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I think of, any of the top performers that I've worked with over the last 10 years, kind of similar to what I mentioned as well, it's this genuine curiosity that you can teach in some ways, but the actual interest in understanding the other person's business or your customer's business takes a certain, type of emotional intelligence and a type of genuine business interest. And I think that the individuals that perform the best in working with customers, and I would say also in terms of the, AEs I work with, is don't ever hang up the phone if you still have another question, right? Even if it feels silly, if it's, maybe I still really don't understand how this prospect or customer makes money. asking questions that, maybe is a little bit outside of your comfort zone, and never hanging up the phone until you feel really confident in the information that you've gathered. And also, doing the research and the extra work that if you don't necessarily feel comfortable asking a specific question, or you need to have some form of a baseline of understanding. Maybe it's, a company is so abstract, you've never heard of it before. And it's like a completely new concept you have to learn about. At least doing some work prior to getting on the phone and knowing what questions you need to ask to fill the gaps that your knowledge has is something that I see with all of my top performers, right? Putting that extra mile and extra work in to get an understanding of, all right, what is this company really doing? What is the end user really focused on? And what hard-hitting questions can I ask to help deepen my understanding so that when it comes to selling, I can put together a story of performance indicators, or I can put together a story of how we ensure that person on the other line gets promoted or hits their revenue targets or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I had an episode, and I don't remember the number. We can put it in the show notes, but it was about asking great questions. And there's good questions, and then there's great questions. And sometimes the great questions come from the result of doing that extra research to really personalize the question, to really tie it into the business, maybe that specific person's specific business unit. And it really makes a difference and raises your level of, I guess, I don't know, call it respect or just your credibility with that customer, the way that you've asked the question and the research that you've done. All right. Well, so Samantha, as you're working with your team, when you're looking to bring on, and you're growing right now, so you're hiring people, and you're looking at the talent, and we're kind of in this dynamic, crazy market right now of hiring, and we'll see what happens as the market continues to do what it does. But what are you seeing out there right now, or what are you really looking for traits, skills, for the type of person that can come in as a customer success and continue to nurture and grow and develop that, the customer base that they will have?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the candidate pool right now, I am definitely seeing a lot of really fantastic candidates. It's definitely different from other years that I've gone through hiring cycles, where now, maybe previously I'd have to go through a really large number of interviews and candidates to find the person that I'm looking for that I think would be best for the role. Now I'm like, can I hire 4 people? Right? There's just some incredible talent out there as a result of what's going on, in the United States economy, and specifically in tech, right? So that's what I'll say first and foremost. If anyone's listening to this and, they unfortunately were a part of a layoff, just know that there are some incredible opportunities out there for you and to really differentiate yourself from others. In terms of what I look for, I was fortunate enough to be trained on how to hire when I was a director at Meltwater a couple of years ago. And, that really helped me with understanding a baseline of what I'm looking for in terms of people being successful customer success managers. And being a customer success manager is a very demanding role, right? I always explain it. And, if anyone who reports to me or has reported to me is hearing this, they've heard this before, is that you think about that game where you are trying to play keep it up with a balloon, right? And maybe you have 10 balloons that you're playing this with. That to me is what customer success is. You have 10 to 15 different metrics and sets of responsibilities. You're trying to keep them all in the air at the same time and hit a quota at the same time while making sure your customers are happy. It's a lot. And for an individual to be able to handle that, working with, in my case at Data AI, right, our CSMs work with 10 to 30 customers, depending on the role. That's a lot of work. We could be talking about, hundreds and sometimes thousands of users, and making sure that you realize that each one of those users is a human being that you want to help and make sure that they're successful. So what I'm getting to is, I really look for individuals when I'm interviewing that have what I like to call X factor, which kind of falls within the hunger and the, I can take on a lot of responsibility and I want a lot of responsibility and I want to do it really well, which, is sometimes very tricky to test for in interviews because we're salespeople, right? We can fake that, but that ties very much into, humility as well. Is this someone that's going to work extremely hard, but also can they take feedback? Are they in it for themselves or are they in it for the big picture? And with that as well, emotional intelligence is really, really important to me. And again, something really difficult, I think, to find or to really test for. And a lot of that comes to, I think, a gut feel. And in my career, making a lot of mistakes, right? Hiring is a skill in itself. It takes a lot of cycles of hiring and making some, maybe not so great hires and having to make some tough, let go decisions and things of that nature to really understand, all right, I thought this person had these three factors, but actually when put to the test in the role, one or two of them might have been lower than what I actually thought when we had interviewed. How can I now change my interview process to ensure that, it's right for the candidate and it's right for us?
Yeah, like anything that we do, right? You're always innovating and adjusting and tweaking and paying attention to what you're doing, how it's working. And if it's working great, great, go do a lot more of that. But if it's not working, all right, well, how do we adjust it so we kind of avoid that, maybe that mistake or misstep along the way? I want to break in with this quick commercial from me. I am very excited to announce that we have our first multifamily real estate deal for the year. This is a really nice boutique 88-unit complex in Tempe, Arizona, which is an incredibly strong submarket of the Phoenix area. And we are partnered with my friend Reed and his company at the RSN Group. They're the ones that found the deal. And they also have another asset very close by this particular property. Investment spots on this one, they're going to fill up quickly because it is also structured to accept 1031 exchanges. And there's a number of exchanges out there right now looking for a home. So if you're interested, just contact us through hightechfreedom.com, or you could book a call using the link in the show notes. And even if you just want to learn a little bit more about the investing process, let's chat. I'm happy to share and follow up with some educational resources. Now back to the show. So Samantha, you talked about feedback, and it just kind of reminded me of some of the most successful sales reps that I've worked with, either worked on my team or just were peers with me on a team. They were great at taking feedback. And, I think of some of them that were maybe collegiate athletes, they were so ingrained and used to getting feedback because coaches give it to you day in and day out, whether or not you want to hear it. But sometimes I know it was hard for me in my early career where I had kind of this fear of my manager, and I had to have this persona with my manager, and I would never just sort of open up and share a challenge that I was having because I thought it might expose that there was some weakness in my sales business or weakness in my territory. But the ones that can do that and have that sort of open and authentic discussion with their managers, assuming their manager is a decent human being,
Right.
your business can accelerate so much faster because you're putting another brain on your problem. You're putting another set of eyes. Maybe you're bringing a couple more people into your business to provide feedback. It's such a good skill to proactively develop as you kind of grow your sales career.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I do tell people also when I'm interviewing, feedback is extremely essential. And you have to be comfortable with the discomfort of sometimes getting really tough feedback, right? I will say, I agree with you. I think athletes make some of the best sales and customer success and account managers because of the feedback loop. And, there are a ton of collegiate athletes on my team right now. So I completely agree with you there.
Oh, really?
That said, feedback is, one of those things to me that is it's a non-negotiable. I, really attribute my personal career successes to the feedback that I was given very early on in my career of, everything from, having a sales manager listening to my phone calls and, I mean this with love, picking apart a lot of the things that I said to help me improve on the next phone call to, giving praise when something really wonderful happened that I worked really hard to get, right? There's that balance of positive feedback and critical feedback that, I really do think is imperative for building, the most successful sales professional or customer success professional, what have you.
What was the hardest feedback that you had to hear, but you did take it and ran with it to improve?
The hardest, there was a lot. As an individual contributor, when I was early on, I think I made it obvious to my customers or to prospects of what I was trying to do, right? I was, very much trying to close a deal.
Hmm.
And I think the feedback that I got on that was, you need to tone it down. You're coming on really strong right now. And to me, I have a big personality. I actually didn't totally know what to do with that. I was like, what? I'm just being me. How do I tone it down? This is who I am. But, I had fantastic managers who gave me that feedback and legitimately sat me down with call recordings and said, do you hear, the tone that you're using? You need to soften that up a bit, right? And I think feedback around tone can be really hard to hear because, at least for me, I don't put on a different voice necessarily, or I didn't at the time. So it takes a lot of practice to understand what you need to do with that feedback. And then I think kind of similarly as a manager, feedback I've gotten about giving others feedback is also around, you want to ensure that you're providing feedback that lands in the right way and that your intentions are heard, to ensure that everyone knows you're all driving towards the same goal and want to be successful together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I do remember the question I was going to ask when I spaced out a little bit, but we were talking about some of the successful team members, sales reps, customer success reps. Is there a habit that you see them doing, or maybe even you do, but that kind of a daily habit, a weekly habit that's really fundamental to driving success day in, day out?
Of course, yeah. I mean, there are a lot. I think, right now, what's coming to me initially is I alluded to this a little bit and I kind of call it doing your homework and doing your prep work. But outside of that, that's kind of more falls into a category of being very specific to the person you're about to call or the calls you have that day. But I think just in general, reading books about not even necessarily business, but just staying really sharp on what's going on in the world. Reading newsletters every morning that, may or may not be impacting your customers, knowing what's going on in the economy and what have you, that information is really essential to be able to have strong conversations with your customers as well as, your internal colleagues to help educate. A really big part of being a customer success manager is that you are the voice of the customer to your company that you work for, right? And staying sharp on what's going on in their industries, regardless of it's impacting them specifically, is really important in providing product feedback, marketing feedback, growth strategies with helping your sales partners that are, day in and day out trying to close new business deals that will become your customers. So in short, to directly answer your question, to me, it's reading. It's really staying
Yeah.
up to date on what's going on in the world and in the industries that you touch upon.
Yeah, staying informed, staying educated.
Yeah,
It's I'm a big believer that if you're not learning, you're going backwards.
exactly.
Yeah. So hey, I'm going to want to run an idea by you. So I'm working on my goals, my 2023 goals. So we're recording this here towards the end of 2022, and usually I break everything down into categories. Family, work, real estate, finances, education, charitable stuff. So on the educational piece, I'm actually working on a new idea this year where I think one of the challenges that so many people have is there's so much information coming at us. We go broad on everything, right? So I'm thinking about an idea of taking one topic and making that sort of my educational topic for the year. So maybe it's just say like I like golf. I'm not saying this is what I'd pick, but all right, you know what? For the year, if I'm going to read a book, it's going to be golf related. It could be about golf. It could be the rules. It could be studying up on turf for golf. It's just going really deep into a subject, or maybe I pick one every quarter.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to read about golf for a whole year.
Yeah, it's a lot. Maybe fly fishing. I don't know, but or it could be World War II. It could be any a historical topic, but just take one topic instead of reading one book. Kind of go down the rat hole of the different avenues of that topic, and just I think as you get a little bit older, just being able to develop deeper understanding of a topic. Now it's got to be exciting to you, but I don't know. Just curious to.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I actually very much like that goal. Might want to copy you on that one. But yeah, I agree with you. It's difficult, right? With our phones constantly going off with notifications and with the TV and, everything that we're being hit with at all times, it is very difficult, I think, to go deep on specific topics. So yeah, I find that super interesting. For me, I feel like podcasting has been a new avenue of digesting information for me. And I was an English major in college, so I always loved reading. But I think, I lost it a little bit when, instead of hanging out at night and reading, I was maybe spending time on my computer, prospecting, looking at, adoption and engagement metrics over my glass of wine instead of, unwinding with a book. I'm trying to reincorporate that back into my life. And I think kind of to your point right now, I'm thinking about the books I'm reading. It's like all over the place. So maybe if I got a little bit more specific and had a quarterly goal of a certain topic I wanted to lean into, that could be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, if you pick one, let me know.
I will. I definitely will.
Well, hey, as we get close to wrapping it up, so Samantha, you clearly have had some success, kind of quickly moving up the ranks and getting to the role that you're in now. What lessons might you pass along, or maybe when you think back, some things that you did, or some things maybe you didn't do, that helped or didn't help your progression to where you're at now in terms of maybe promotions or career advancement?
Yeah, a few things. I think something that I have always done and, will try to continue to do is really just put my head down and focus on being present, right? Focus on the here and now. That doesn't mean, plan for your target next quarter and 2 quarters out and set yourself up. That's not what I'm talking about. But I really mean, enjoy the present and constantly be thinking about the feedback that you get from your peers and the people around you that are looking out for your best interests, and just focus on grinding out, being really successful in what you're currently doing, because everything else will fall into place. The fortunate movement that I've had around my career has every single time come as a shock. I've been very lucky in that sense that, there have been times I've gotten promotions that I felt I wasn't ready for or didn't necessarily deserve because of my experience. And, the people around you will give you what you are ready for, whether you think it or not. And I think also, we spoke about this a bit the last time we chatted, is building your brand. Mm-hmm. Anyone who works on my team or who, I'm giving advice to in their careers, I always say, think about how you can build a brand for the rest of your company and for your customers to know what you're all about. That's not, necessarily meant have a huge ego and run around self-promoting, but think about, how do you want to be perceived by the others around you? And what steps do you need to take to ensure that you have that reputation, right? And that's something that I and, my team are always talking about and thinking about is, what's your goal as, a CSM or an AE in terms of how people perceive you? And what can I do as your manager to guide you to have that reputation and to ensure that your organization recognizes you in that capacity? So those are kind of the two pieces of advice I would leave behind.
Yeah. So being intentional about it, sitting down and taking some time to think about it. And, Samantha, to your comment earlier, I could see you grinding it out, but I can tell that you're probably a really good communicator. You're having conversations. So as you're grinding it out, no doubt, I'm sure you're communicating what you're doing, the success your team's having. And, that's probably has a lot to do with why you're getting tapped continuously for the next opportunity.
I hope so. I try to ensure that, those that are doing, really spectacular work and are, special individuals to our company, I guess, in this capacity, are being recognized for that work. And I have no problem, giving praise and showing praise where it's needed to the rest of the organization and where it's really deserved. But yes, I would say I'm always in constant communication with my team, with my peers, with my managers around, how the business is doing and also how the individuals are doing to ensure that, like I said, recognition is given and received when needed.
Yeah, I love it. Well, so Samantha, if somebody would like to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect out?
Definitely LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. That's my favorite social media network. So I would say feel free to reach out there.
Okay. And we'll put your link in the show notes. Well, Samantha, thank you for your time today. Really a pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you so much, Chris. You too.
Thanks again for joining us today. To get more sales and real estate tips, you can subscribe to our newsletter at hightechfreedom.com. You can also join our private Facebook and LinkedIn group that is exclusively for sales professionals. If you found a nugget of good information in the podcast, please subscribe, give us a positive rating, and write a review. If there is a topic that you would like us to cover in the future, please send us a note through our website at hightechfreedom.com. Until next week, Make this your best week ever.